It was 11:52 p.m. when Olivia Chen used her student ID to swipe into Jefferson Hall, her dormitory at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, exhausted from studying at the library for the past 4 hours and ready to collapse into bed before her 8 a.m. chemistry exam. The dorm building required card access after 10 p.m., a security measure designed to keep non-residents out, and Olivia had always felt safe in the building despite it being a massive structure housing over 600 students across 12 floors. She walked through the entrance, the door closing and locking automatically behind her, and headed toward the elevator bank, pressing the up button and waiting. The elevator arrived, and as Olivia stepped inside and turned to press the button for the 8th floor where her room was located, a man appeared, jogging toward the elevator saying, "Hold it, please." Olivia's hand automatically moved to hold the door. It was a reflex, the polite thing to do, something she'd done 100 times before. But something made her hesitate, made her really look at the man approaching. He was probably mid-20s, wearing a hoodie and jeans, carrying a backpack that could have belonged to any student. But Olivia didn't recognize him, and more importantly, she hadn't seen him swipe in at the front entrance behind her, which meant either he'd been already inside the building or he'd followed her in without using a card when she'd opened the door. The training she'd received during freshman orientation echoed in her mind. Never hold the door for someone who doesn't swipe their own card. Never let people tailgate into secure buildings. Don't be polite at the expense of safety. Olivia let the elevator door close, watching through the small window as the man's expression changed from friendly expectation to annoyance when he realized she wasn't holding it, and she pressed the button for the 8th floor, her heart starting to pound. The elevator began to rise, and through the floor indicator, Olivia could see the man was taking the stairs, moving fast, and her floor was 8 levels up, which meant he'd be climbing 8 flights, which meant he was really motivated to follow her, which meant this wasn't just a coincidence or a student who'd forgotten his ID. Olivia made a decision. Instead of getting off on the 8th floor and going to her room, she pressed the button for the 5th floor where her friend Megan lived, and she pulled out her phone and texted Megan, "Someone's following me in the dorm. I'm coming to your floor. Don't let me stand in the hallway alone." The elevator reached the 5th floor, the doors opened, and Olivia stepped out, looking both ways down the hallway, seeing a few students walking to their rooms. Normal activity, safety in numbers. She walked quickly to Megan's room and knocked, and Megan opened immediately, having just received the text, her eyes wide with concern. "What's happening?" Megan asked, pulling Olivia inside and locking the door. Olivia explained about the man, about him not swiping in, about him taking the stairs when she wouldn't hold the elevator, and even as she was explaining, they heard footsteps in the hallway, someone walking past Megan's room, pausing, walking back, and both girls froze, barely breathing. A knock on the door, soft but insistent. Neither of them answered. The knock came again, harder this time, and a male voice called out, "Olivia? I know you're in there. I just want to talk." Megan's face went pale. How did he know Olivia's name? How did he know which room she'd entered? Olivia grabbed Megan's phone. Hers was still in her hand, but she was shaking too badly to dial, and called campus police, whispering urgently that there was a man outside her friend's dorm room who'd followed her into the building, that he knew her name somehow, that he was trying to get her to open the door. The campus police dispatcher told them to stay locked inside, told them officers were in the building and would be at their location within 90 seconds, told them not to engage with the person outside. They could hear the man still in the hallway, no longer knocking, but still there. They could see his shadow under the door, blocking the light from the hallway, and Olivia's mind raced, trying to figure out how he knew her name. Had he been following her before tonight? Had he seen her ID when she'd swiped in? Was he a student who'd been stalking her without her knowledge? Footsteps approached from the other end of the hallway, heavy and purposeful, and they heard a voice. "University of Michigan Police, put your hands where I can see them." Scuffling sounds, the man protesting, claiming he was just trying to find his friend's room, and the officer's response, "You're not a resident of this building. You were seen on camera entering without authorization. You need to come with me now." They arrested him in the hallway, and through Megan's peephole, Olivia could see him being led away in handcuffs, still protesting, still claiming it was a misunderstanding. The campus police officer knocked on Megan's door, identified himself properly, and when the girls opened it, he asked them to come to the lobby to give statements. His name was Officer Rodriguez, and he told them they'd done everything right. Olivia not holding the elevator, getting off on a different floor, going to a friend's room instead of being alone, calling immediately when the situation escalated. The man they'd arrested wasn't a student. His name was Derek Mills, 26 years old, no affiliation with the university, and he'd been caught on security cameras entering the building by following closely behind a student who'd swiped in, a tactic called tailgating that security had been trying to prevent. More disturbing, when they searched Mills, they found a notebook with Olivia's name, her dorm building, her class schedule, and photographs he'd apparently taken of her over the past several days around campus, entering the library, walking to class, sitting in the student union. Olivia felt sick. She'd been stalked for days without knowing it, and tonight Mills had escalated from observation to action, following her into her dorm with intent that became clear when detectives searched his backpack and found zip ties, duct tape, and a knife. The university launched an investigation into how Mills had gained access to Olivia's schedule and personal information, and they discovered he'd been posing as a graduate student in the chemistry department, gaining access to buildings and computer systems, using his fake credentials to look up student information in databases he shouldn't have been able to access. Campus security reviewed footage from the past week and found Mills had been on campus nearly every day, following Olivia, learning her patterns, waiting for an opportunity, and tonight had been his move, his attempt to get into her dorm, get to her floor, get into her room. If Olivia had held that elevator, if she'd gotten off on her own floor and gone to her room, if she'd been polite instead of cautious, Mills would have been right behind her, would have known which room was hers, would have had the opportunity to attack when she was alone and vulnerable. The prosecutor charged Mills with stalking, trespassing, attempted burglary, and possession of weapons on school property, among other counts. And because his backpack contained restraints and weapons, they argued he'd been planning an abduction or assault. Mills had a history in other states, restraining orders, stalking charges that had been dismissed, a pattern of obsessive behavior toward young women, and the prosecutor successfully argued for enhanced sentencing based on the calculated nature of his stalking and the danger he represented. He was convicted and received 15 years, and the judge specifically mentioned Olivia's awareness and quick thinking in his sentencing remarks, noting that her refusal to hold the elevator had disrupted Mills' plan and created the delay that allowed campus police to respond. Olivia transferred to a different dorm after the incident, requested a new student ID number and email address, and the university implemented stricter security protocols, including more cameras in dorm buildings, additional training for students about tailgating prevention, and a policy requiring all visitors to sign in at security desks with photo ID verification. Olivia became involved with campus safety initiatives, speaking at freshman orientations about her experience, emphasizing that the few seconds of social awkwardness when you don't hold a door for someone who hasn't swiped in could save your life, that security protocols exist for reasons, and that politeness should never override safety. She tells students that if someone gets angry or aggressive when you follow security rules, that reaction itself is a red flag, because legitimate students and visitors understand the protocols and won't pressure you to violate them, while predators rely on social pressure and your reluctance to seem rude. Olivia still thinks about that night constantly, the elevator door closing, the man's expression changing, the stairs he'd climbed to follow her, the knock on Megan's door, and his voice saying her name. And she knows that her decision to trust her instincts, to notice details like him not swiping in, to change her behavior based on that observation, was the only thing that prevented Derek Mills from succeeding in whatever he'd planned. And she wants every student, every person living in a secured building, to know that those card readers and locked doors are only effective if you don't let strangers follow you through them, and that the person who seems annoyed when you make them swipe their own card might be the person who shouldn't be there in the first place.